on an emergency basis, meaning that it becomes effective as soon as the mayor signs it rather than waiting for the congressional review period. I'm going to go through some highlights. I'm going to start with those which I think will get the most attention. In the Budget Support Act, there is a subtitle with regard to Initiative 82, that's the tip wage. That is not what the mayor proposed, which was just a full repeal of the initiative, but rather a compromise that's been worked out among a majority of council members, which is that there will continue to be a tip wage, but restaurant workers will be entitled to a higher minimum wage than what otherwise would be provided, and that is $20 an hour. And the tip wage, which is the part that the restaurant is responsible for, would be $8 an hour. Of course, the restaurant's responsible for the difference between 8 and 20 if that's not made up in tips. I've heard from many restaurant workers that where their income has gone with Initiative 82 as it has been implemented, it's being implemented gradually, as if their wages have gone, their earnings have gone down. And so this would stop that, as well as provide some stability for restaurants. The mayor submitted a legislation that had a couple of subtitles with regard to gambling. One was cards and blackjack, and the other had to do with bingo. What I have circulated is essentially what the Committee on Business and Economic Development had reported out, which does not authorize the card gaming, which I think is poker and blackjack, but does authorize bingo. There are some limitations there that are through the language. You have to read the language of the subtitle, which requires the CFO or the lottery, it's really the lottery board, to approve the bingo equipment and to ensure that it's in compliance with the law, which has some restrictions. For example, the law restricts slot machines. If you look for language in the Budget Support Act, with regard to RFK, I think you all know that a week or two ago, I introduced that subtitle as freestanding legislation, and it's on that legislation that we will have a hearing on July 29th and 30th. If you look in the budget, what the mayor proposed is still in the budget intact, and that's the $500 million plus the borrowing for the parking garages. There are not actually separate lines for those in the budget. It's in the debt service. We didn't touch that. So of course, this is all being negotiated between the council and the commanders, but there is the ability to fund fully as the mayor had proposed. With regard to other issues, I'm going to start with other economic development issues. The the mayor had proposed with the budget several tax increases, although she didn't characterize them as that, including a new tax or fee on hotels per room per night. And we've taken that, or what I've circulated removes that, strikes that. So there will not be a tax increase there. The mayor had also proposed eliminating the sunset on the Tourism Recovery District, which is the name of a tax. It's a 1% hotel tax, as I recall. And we extend the existing sunset by 6 months, but otherwise we maintain the sunset rather than eliminating it. The mayor had also continues to propose an increase in the sales tax, although it would not happen next year. She, in her proposal, delayed it by a year. We were unable to change that. And the mayor eliminated in her proposal the child tax credit, and we were unable, at least in what I circulated, to restore the child tax credit, which I think is unfortunate because that actually does address families and lower income families in the district. I'm hopeful, and I've talked to other council members, that we'll be able to come back next year with a full and robust child tax credit. But that will not be in what's circulated or what has been circulated. I'm going to shift to other issues. criminal justice. So there was a lot of talk and controversy around the time of the Judiciary Committee markup. We moved the Cure the Streets to, we fund Cure the Streets by about, which is 6 Cure the Streets sites, and fund that to the Office of Neighborhood Engagement. And there was a Pathways program that's associated with that, and violence interrupters, and the Judiciary Committee had proposed moving that to Department of Employment Services. We moved that back to the Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement. We've kept funding as proposed for the Metropolitan Police Department, except not the new program that involves a horse-mounted detail. We kept funding for are trying to increase hiring and increase the size of the Metropolitan Police Department police force. We added money, what was circulated today, adds money to the Department of Forensic Sciences for DNA testing. That had come up as an unfunded need or underfunded in the mayor's proposal. And we restore funding for the Access to Justice initiative, keeping it at the same level as the current year, which is roughly $30 million. We are a leader in the country in terms of public support for access to justice. Access to justice concerns lower income individuals or families who have been denied services or benefits, either federal or local, or are struggling with, for instance, eviction and rent payments. Whatever the need is, they will do better if they have an attorney in court, or they have an attorney in the administrative adjudication process. And that's what access to justice is to provide through the Bar Foundation, the DC Bar Foundation, funding to nonprofit organizations that provide those civil legal services to lower income folks. It's a very effective program, and as I said, we've been a leader in the country. In the area of housing, excuse me, we put dollars in, I think it's roughly $8 million to help with rapid rehousing exits. The executive continues to push for exiting from rapid rehousing, which is a form of housing support for low-income families, to exit families from that, and without resources to help them. And so this is to provide some resources, which includes some PSH vouchers, some targeted affordable housing vouchers, and some now I'm blanking on what the other is. With regard to the exits, I think I'll leave it there. We also maintain the mayor's proposal of $100 million for the Housing Production Trust Fund. We add $10 million for the Housing Preservation Fund. We provide some funding to restore case management for TANF families in the housing sphere. In education, the committee of the whole markup several weeks ago fully funded schools under the Schools First in Budgeting Act. So schools, unless there's been a precipitous drop in enrollment, will see the same funding next year that they got this year. That was done at the committee of the whole several weeks ago, but we maintain that, of course. And we have funding in the $1.2 million for St. Coletta's, which I don't understand why year after year the executive underfunds them. They provide a very valuable service for special needs kids who need the services. We have more money in the Office of the State Superintendent for Education for the School Improvement Initiative, which focuses on the lowest performing schools to provide additional resources so that those schools can improve academic achievement. And we are continuing the truancy pilot at the Department of Human Services, doubling the number of schools to see if that alternative to what the process has been will be more effective at reducing truancy and improving attendance. We increased the pay equity fund So this is new in what was circulated today by about $4 million. That's to the pay equity fund. Last year, the mayor had proposed zeroing that out. And for next year, it'll be, my notes here say $73.6 million. We also addressed the underfunding for childcare, this childcare subsidy program. So there'll be a $15 million increase for FY26, bringing the funding for the program, according to my notes here, to $101 million. This is childcare, childcare subsidy that's different than the pay equity fund, which addresses the early child educators. And then we added $2.4 million to the OSSI budget for the community schools grant program. Lastly, in the area of the environment, what the mayor proposed was a real gutting of environmental programs, delaying BEPS by a decade. That's building energy performance standards, BEPS, just delaying it by a decade. If I remember correctly, 60% of buildings right now are compliant. And there's no reason to stall that. And there was no cost associated with the mayor's proposal or for us to maintain the program, which is what we do. The mayor had also redirected virtually all of the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund to the general fund, and we're putting about $15 million back into that. She had reduced funding for the Green Bank. She stripped funding from the Tree Fund. She delayed or repealed the net zero requirements. Delayed the purchase of electric vehicles, delayed the purchase of electric vehicles for the government fleet. Don't understand that. Repealed the parking cash out program, which actually is no cost to an employer unless they want to provide parking benefits to their employees. She stripped the bag fee, which is to help with cleaning up the Anacostia River. We were not able to restore all of that, although we'll continue to work on that. I talked with Councilmember Allen about working between first and second reading to see if we can't do better there. I think that's pretty much everything I want to cover in this, and then in this summary, and then open the floor to questions. Megan.
The initiatives. Earlier, we covered some of what the feedback process was like on your proposal on I-82. I'm wondering if you consulted any of the unions representing restaurant workers who have been pretty vocal about this. Was any feedback from the unions incorporated into the
I have not talked with the unions about it, so I am not able to answer that.
Do you know if they were consulted?
I don't know.
Okay. And then secondly, on the other initiative, Initiative 83, you said it's not going to be funded in the budget proposal. Can you explain your rationale?
That initiative was very clear that it was not funded. And as a matter of priorities, in my view, there were other priorities like housing, education, public safety that were a higher priority. Now, that's just my view.
Ranked choice voting.
The initiative that Megan's asking about is ranked choice voting and the open primary. Any other questions? Okay, Martin?
Well, just quick to follow up on what Megan was asking about 83. I mean, proponents are going to come back and say that's only $1.6 million. And on that list of priorities that council members ranked on the kind of the smaller priorities, I think it was ranked third. So there was interest among some members to get this funded. So was this really a matter of you couldn't find $1.6 million, or it's just not something that's is of particular interest to you, I suppose?
Well, you could read a bit of that into it. I know there are also other members who don't support it. And let me just check something here. Yeah,
Also-
1.5 million.
Okay. You could also rank how high on your priority list ranked choice voting would be if that makes it
Yes, I
easier.
know. Unfortunately, that bit of humor was used by a number of council members as well. We could have used ranked choice voting for the priorities. Did you have any other questions?
Not for now, but like I'll let other people go.
All right, who's next?
On 82, just in speaking with the union, it seems like their main concern is not only about the cut to the base wage for workers, but also for the complexity that this may present when it comes to enforcement. Now there needs to be, policing not only that you're, reaching minimum wage for one set of workers, you're reaching a different higher minimum wage for another set of workers. How are you thinking about how this is going to work in practice?
I'm a little mystified by that, to be honest. Just as an example, we've had for decades in the law a tip wage, which is one number, and a minimum wage, which is a different number, and also a requirement that employers have to make up the difference if tips don't. And from an administrative point of view, I'm not aware that the Department of Employment Services has complained that it's difficult to administer. So I don't know why this would be. And that was not a question. That was a statement. I don't know why it would be. So I think that folks who may not be happy with this compromise can be throwing up a lot of reasons why they think it's a problem, but that one's not persuasive to me.
I think one of the other ones was about, the persistent issue with wage theft, them feeling like it was just simplest to raise the wage so that you don't have to worry about whether or not employers are indeed meeting this.
I think, that's another convenient argument, and I put it that way because I think that we see with other employment sectors where there's only one minimum wage, that there's wage theft. And I think we also see that with workers who are getting more than a minimum wage, that there is wage theft. So I don't see why this would be especially vulnerable to wage theft. Wage theft is against the law, and we have seen that the Attorney General, Brian Schwab, has been much more aggressive than we saw before we had an elected Attorney General with regard to prosecuting wage theft. And I think it's important that the government prosecute it so that we send a message that it's not acceptable.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask on the same subject, why are you overturning the will of the people?
Why am I pausing to answer? Because I just think it's, that argument has been used a lot. With regard to the initiative, it is clear from the industry, both the employers and the employees, that the implementation of this initiative has been very, very problematic. You'll recall that I did move to repeal it in 2018, and I had a hearing, and the people most affected, who were the tip workers, were overwhelmingly the witnesses who were opposed to the initiative. And I'm seeing that again now, that workers who are the ones who are affected by this are opposed to this, to the initiative. I would rather listen to those who are affected by a public policy than by those who are proposing the public policy, which could be, sometimes it is, us. There's a question, Marquez, behind you. Either of them.
If I could just stay on I-82 for a second, can you explain the reasoning for the $20 an hour figure and the 10% cap? Those are two pretty big changes, particularly the 10% cap. There are some restaurants that have as high as a 20% service fee right now. So can you explain why you believe a 10% cap on service fees is the right number, and why the $20 an hour minimum wage for tipped workers is the right number?
The argument would be that the higher minimum wage for the tip workers is a part of the compromise to make this more attractive to workers. And the cap on the service fees, you may remember that, I want to say months ago, but maybe it was a year ago, we had an extensive debate in the council about service fees, and there's a lot of controversy around them. So putting a cap on it is appealing to many people.
And then if I could just ask, we discussed in the briefing the failure of the council, or the lack of appetite of the council to try to save the 25,000 people who will be kicked off of Medicaid when and if this.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's a failure of the council. There is some restructuring of the alliance, and there also is going to be, I hate to use these words, but movement of people from the alliance to the health benefit exchange. What the council wants to see, and I think actually this was the intent behind the mayor's proposal, is that as many DC residents as possible continue to have access to an insurance program that gives them affordable health care. There's a need to do some restructuring with the alliance because we're finding that the amount that we're paying compared to the take-up rate by individuals is starkly different. And so changes to the alliance, such as moving to fee-for-service, as well as moving folks to the health benefit exchange, we hope will have similar benefit, but be much more cost-effective. Similar benefit, but much more cost-effective.
And then just two other topics.
And let me just emphasize that. So if we are under this year and in previous years simply paying a fee for each individual enrolled in a managed care program, but those people aren't accessing health care, then we're just paying for people who aren't accessing health care. If we go to fee-for-service, then we're actually paying for the service, and that should result in significant savings.
And then if I could just ask you, you estimated that you have restored more than $100 million in cuts to the mayor's proposal.
Correct.
Can you give us any idea of where you got that $100? Is there even just the one or two biggest areas where you were able to recover money to save these programs, or at least partially?
Well, I think you will, if you look closely at the budget documents, and if you also look at whatever the mayor's reaction is going to be, or even the mayor's reaction last week, because there was a letter sent to the council, I think July 2nd, you're not going to find that there's a big program that we cut by $100 million in order to fund these improvements. What you're going to see is there were little cuts, what I characterized earlier as squeeze. We looked where we could squeeze more. Just to give you an example, the mayor submitted her budget on May 28th. Based on data through roughly half the year. We're acting in July, roughly 3/4 of the year, 3/4 of the way through the year. So we have seen where there are savings in the current year that we could take.
Was it a good thing the mayor put it in late?
No, absolutely not a good thing. This is maybe one benefit. And it may be the only benefit, is that we were able to find some additional savings. That's just an example. We did a lot of squeezing.
Thanks.
There was a question.
Have the commanders raised any concerns about the stadium language being taken out of this budget and put into a standalone bill?
The mayor has, not to me directly, but I've read where she has made public statements saying she wasn't happy about that.
But what about the team, the commanders? Have they communicated to you that they have any concerns about this?
So I've had a number of meetings with representatives of the team, and those meetings have been very productive and pleasant and constructive, and we're working well together.
To follow up on this, do you anticipate any council members proposing an amendment to maybe add that language back into the budget?
No, I don't.
And last question.
But let me be clear. The council we are trying to move toward a positive vote on the stadium. So don't read into that anything from members.
And my last question, what have the communications been like between council and Ward 8 leaders and community members to ensure that their needs are actually reflected in this budget?
I think you'll find that a number of the council members, especially the at-large council members, have been particularly attuned to feedback or comments from Ward 8 residents and businesses and responsive to that. So I don't think you're going to find that there's something that Ward 8 needs that we're just ignoring because there isn't a Ward 8 representative. We've tried to be sensitive to those residents.
One last follow-up to that, though. Has the expulsion of Treon White, Councilmember Treon White, complicated any sort of, processes in the budget as far as making sure the Ward 8 needs are met?
I would say no. Today.
Lay out the timeline that we're going to follow now. I'm glad you're smiling.
I'm smiling because I've been asked this question and asked this question about 8 different ways each of the last 8 days. We're moving as quickly as we can.
But there are public hearings on the 28th and 29th.
Hearings on the public hearing on the 29th and 30th.
You rule out coming back in August for a vote?
I'm not ruling anything out. I'm working with the commanders to get to an agreement as quickly as possible.
So you could take a vote during what was called the recess previously.
I'm working with the commanders.
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up that, can the council meet on Zoom to take any vote if they were to meet on anything in August? You can meet by Zoom.
You know that since COVID, the council has been able to meet on Zoom.
Well, it's no longer COVID. I just want to make sure that was still in the rules.
It's still in the rules.
And when you talked about this previously about August, you said, well, there's a lot of problems. We're on vacation. People are going to be out of town.
There
People
are a
may
lot of
not be
problems.
available.
All that's true.
My understanding is you're going to be out of town at least for a few days on a short trip, and so you won't be here without getting into personal where you're going. Can
Yeah,
you
it
say
does
that?
sound like it's getting into personal. I
Be
will
away.
share my plans and I'll even send you a postcard if you want me to.
Well, you're going to be gone for 3 days or a week,
I'll be gone for a little bit.
but then
I don't think that's an issue.
so.
You said the rule change that you're going to vote on that relates to voting in August is somewhat moved because of the RFK vote.
We have there's a rules change that I'm putting before the members on tomorrow that would authorize committee markups during recess. The rules already allow a committee meeting, a council meeting during recess.
And how would that be related to the stadium deal?
Just provides flexibility.
I'm sorry?
It just provides flexibility.
No, a legislative meeting.
Uh,
Could do both.
The rules already allow a legislative meeting. The rule change tomorrow would allow a committee markup.
When do you go on recess? When's
We're on recess beginning on the 15th, which means Tuesday.
Of September 15th.
Correct.
you're on recess?
And as you know, Tom, it may be recess, but it's not vacation.
Wait, you said July 15th or August 15th?
I said July 15th.
July 15th. So you're going to have your public hearings on the stadium while you're on recess.
Correct. Megan.
Circle back to healthcare, your answer to Mark's question. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was the people on Alliance are losing their healthcare, the adults over 21, or at least unless Christina Henderson's recommendations were not taken up. They are not being moved to like new healthcare plans unless that has changed. But the people who are on Medicaid, who are being booted from Medicaid, are moving to the basic healthcare program under the exchange. Is there been a new proposal that the people on Alliance will also be part of this transition?
I can answer the latter part, which is there's not a new proposal. I am not as well versed on the healthcare provisions as on other aspects of the budget. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. What is before the council for tomorrow is not much different than what the health committee marked up.
Okay, and I guess, just having assessed the needs in this budget, people completely losing healthcare or in a transition to a different program, potentially losing at least vision and some behavioral health services. What is your assessment on the cost of that to the district, just from a more like healthcare needs standpoint? It seems like a lot of the effort was driven by cost savings, but there's still a significant amount of concern about the impact that what has been characterized previously as just, oh, minor change to someone's healthcare plan.
When the mayor sent down the budget, because there is declining revenues from FY25, the current year, to FY26, those are the revenue projections. And we've seen increased costs. The mayor proposed cuts. And the cuts that she proposed were, there was a particular, there was a greater impact with regard to the health programs and the environmental programs. The Committee on Health did a lot of work. They should be commended. A lot of work to try to restore what they could. And that's as far as we got with regard to health. And as I mentioned earlier in the briefing, with regard to the environment, the Committee on Transportation and Environment tried to restore what it could, which wasn't very much. So that's just kind of where we are. With regard to the details, I would look to the Committee on Health report. We made a few improvements, but they were with, we, meaning the committee of the whole, have made a few improvements, but they're, I would call them important, but in terms of dollars, small. Mark Seagraves, and then
Chairman,
Dorothy.
Going back to the June revenue estimates and benefiting from that, how much are you taking from the June revenue estimates to fill this $100 million in cuts that you're restoring?
$60 million, which is the difference between the revenues, which is 243.6, as I recall, and the spending pressures, which is overspending by agencies, which is about $180 million.
That's a pretty significant amount. I mean, we'd asked 6 Ways to Sunday where you were getting the bulk of this money and you weren't able to say, but it seems like more than half of it is coming from the June revenue estimates. Is that fair to say?
I would say no, but you can go with that if you want.
Have you consulted with the CFO? It's my understanding the CFO, is the CFO signed off on you doing that, taking the $60 million from the June revenue estimates to help balance this budget? Is that something the CFO has approved of?
I informed him of this on Friday.
So you informed him of it, and what was his response? Was he overwhelmingly receptive, or did he tell you that you shouldn't do it?
I'm not going to speak for him.
Well, I mean, do you need his authority? This seems like a lot of money, and several of us asked you in the room multiple different ways, where are you getting the bulk? Can you just tell us the couple of biggest ways you got this money? And you just kept saying, we're squeezing a little bit here, squeezing a little bit there. But now you're saying openly that $60 million, more than half of the money, is coming from the June revenue estimates. And I'm wondering if that's something that the CFO is going to endorse, if that's something that you've done before. It just sounds a little bit like a fifth quarter to me.
It's hardly a fifth quarter.
Okay.
It's hardly a fifth quarter, Mark, really.
Okay, but again,
so
we've asked you several times about this, and you have been, and until now, you haven't said anything about this. And I'm just wondering if this is kosher.
So let me just, because you brought it up, the fifth quarter was a proposal 30 years ago to move revenues from next year into this year from real property tax collections as if there were 5 quarters in a year. That's a bit of a sham. When the CFO came out with the revenue estimates on June 27th, he estimated that revenues for FY26 through the remainder of the financial plan were flat, but that there was $243.6 million of available cash this fiscal year. He also has said, and actually it's more me saying, because I don't think he has said this publicly, that there is spending pressures, and those spending pressures, the last figure we got was $180 million from the Office of Budget. And I can tell you the mayor's folks have indicated they think the spending pressures are about $110 million. Now, if you do the math between the conservative $180 million, conservative compared to 110, if you do the math between 180 and 240, you get 60. So that's the 60 we're talking about. That's $60 million that's sitting on the table right now. Frankly, I'm concerned that members are going to say, well, we should be taking all $243 million. And I think they have a good argument and a good claim for that. I think the responsible thing is that even though it's irresponsible, the underspending, that the council is allowing that there will be $180 million available for these spending pressures if in fact the mayor is unable to keep them at 110. Let me add, when I talk about spending pressures at $180 million, that's on top of the $130 million in overspending that the mayor asked us to appropriate through the supplemental. That's a total of about $400 million in overspending by the executive, which in my view is completely intolerable. It's not appropriated. It is spending above what was appropriated. It is in violation of the Deficiency or Anti-Deficiency Act. And we should not have to fund that. The mayor should not be overspending, and the CFO should not be allowing the overspending. What is the purpose of a CFO if he or she is not controlling spending and ensuring that spending is limited to the budget? And sure, when Congress doesn't reimburse police expenses to the tune of what, $40 million, maybe they would be overspending in the police department. But $400 million in overspending spread across all the agencies? No. And this is cash on the table, $243.6 million as of June 27th, and it may be more as of September 30th, and we are only taking $60 million. Thank you. Dorothy.
Your question based upon something I asked you at the briefing, because in the intervening time, I've learned more and gotten more information about it. I asked you a question at the briefing this morning about the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council provision in the Budget Act regarding FOIA. And your answer to me was what exactly? Because it might be a disconnect in terms of what I thought you said and what I heard.
What I said is that the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, which is made up of all the public safety agencies, including the federal agencies, collects data from federal agencies like the courts, CSOSA, the U.S. Attorney, and the courts and pretrial services and CSOSA, and I'm leaving somebody out here, Bureau of Prisons, they've indicated that they will not give the data to CJCC for the justice system if it can be FOIA'd. So if you, for example, and I don't really mean you, Dorothy, but if you want to get data from the Pretrial Services Agency, you should go to them and you should do a FOIA request. And it's whatever the federal law allows, but you shouldn't be able to go to CJCC, which is not the holder of the data, and get the data through them. Because if you can, then the agencies aren't going to share the data, and then the whole purpose of justice, which is the name of their data system, the whole purpose is undercut. So that's why there's language that says that you can't FOIA this stuff.
Well, you elaborated on the answer you gave me at the briefing, but let me take it a step further. My understanding from very reliable sources isn't the problem isn't information that is accessible or available to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. The problem is the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council has not been meeting, has not met. Its membership is such that people are not attending the meeting. They will not let the public even know when they meet. So why are you facilitating their problem solving by suggesting that the problem is the information that is available to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, as opposed to introducing a Support Act amendment, changing the composition, revitalizing the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council? Why are you going this route in terms of saying the problem is the information that's accessible to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, as opposed to The council, which hasn't been meeting for some time. By some time, I understand it might be a couple of years.
Let's see. I try to attend their meetings every month. I think I've missed the last couple, but they've been meeting every month.
Why won't they let the public know when they're meeting?
You have to ask them. I'm not an officer of the CJCC.
Who is the head of the CJC?
Christy Love. She is the staff, the executive director. The co-chairs are, I forget the federal co-chair. I think the DC co-chair is the deputy mayor for public safety and justice.
To you with this idea that the problem with the functioning of the CJCC is the fact that there's certain information accessible to the coordinating council that cannot be made public, and that an amendment in the Budget Support Act is needed to protect this information. Who came to you with that idea?
The issue has to do with we put money in the budget for supporting or improving the justice software system. And in connection with that, we were informed, and if the answer is who, I would say staff to staff, that there was this issue with the federal agencies not wanting to share data unless we protect the data from FOIA.
So you would be totally surprised to learn that the problem isn't data sharing. The problem is the functioning of the CJCC.
Correct. Again, I go to their meetings. Pardon?
So just following up a little bit on what Mark was asking about this pot of money that you guys are drawing from, and your frustration with the mayor about this overspending by agencies. You've also got 2 pages in the budget.
I'm never frustrated.
Never frustrated. And it's clear because you've got those 2 pages in the budget report talking about how frustrated you are with the mayor's handling of the budget and kind of relationships and how much they communicate, transparency, all this sort of stuff. At what point, you know, are there consequences? Are there sanctions? Are there things the council can do? You've talked about you haven't yet gotten these budget enhancement documents.
Sanctions, you know, I brought that up at a meeting and I haven't heard the end of it from representatives of the executive.
No, but it's a legitimate question. You express all these frustrations. You are part of a co-equal branch of government that has authority and power and can do things. Will you do anything? Will there be a moment of reckoning where you say, listen, we're frustrated about this. You have to do this because we are the legislative branch?
Well, there are things that I can do as an individual, but in the end, it's up to the full council. As you may know, I have said to members that with regard to the overspending, we need to stop allowing it by approving these reprogrammings. Excuse me, let me phrase that differently. We need to stop allowing it without any consequence by approving these reprogrammings. These agencies need to be held accountable for their spending, and both the executive and the CFO need to step up and control this overspending. $400 million. We would probably not be talking about any of this stuff if we had $400 million that we could appropriate for next year. But the agencies are allowed to overspend both on the executive side and on the CFO side. Did that answer your question? I'm not sure.
I still think you're talking about this like you have no agency at all, which is interesting. You do, but
well, our agency is in not approving the reprogrammings, and this isn't quite the same, but oversight hearings. So I remember, you may or may not have been around, when Dennis Rubin was the fire chief and I had hearings on his overspending. It didn't stop the overspending because oversight isn't the same as what the CFO can do or the executive can do. I don't know what I'm open to other tools.
I mean, you're asking the wrong people here. We're not the ones to give you that sort of suggestion. I'm just curious because I'm sure you've been in the council long enough. You've seen plenty of CFOs and mayors come and go. I'm assuming you would understand the power the council has. Speaking of the overspending thing, does it change the way you're thinking about, I know you guys are barely getting done with this budget, but moving into the next budget year, how you're thinking about where things are going to be next year, given that you have agencies overspending, you already have the mayor's already put in this budget that education funding for next year is going to go down unless you guys do something about it. The pay equity fund, I mean, there's a lot of pots of money that are going to have to be filled next year. There may not be a magical pot of money to draw from. So how is that changing the way you're thinking the work that the council has to do on that oversight of overspending and things like that?
I think that, I don't think, we put additional resources into the council's budget office to look at expenditures or spending and where we could get more efficiency. Sort of what I was talking about earlier with the fee for service as opposed to managed care contracts. Looking for ways or where we can get more efficiency in spending. And I'm not sure, I'm thinking about if I could add to that. I think that's the main thing, where we could get more efficiencies in spending. So there may be some programs that are completely ineffective, there may be some programs that are duplicative. There's some programs that maybe could be structured differently, and we get the same or better results, but spending less money. We're looking at that. I want to go back to, because your question troubles me, and not because you shouldn't ask it, but the law, the sanction in the law is that if an agency overspends, the person responsible, which is probably the agency director, is subject to prosecution. The council does not prosecute. That's up to, and I don't know if it's a misdemeanor or a felony, but it's up to the prosecutors whether to prosecute. That's never happened in the time that I've been involved with the home rule government. I'm not even sure it happens in the federal government, even though it's basically the same law.
Do you want it to happen? Do you want people to be prosecuted for overspending?
I think that threat needs to be more real.
More real?
More real. Because folks are not taking seriously, and it's taking seriously the constraints of the budget. The budget cannot be a guide. It has to be a limit.
Yeah.
I authorize you to spend $100 million. That's not a guide. That's your limit. You can't spend more than $100,000.
Mr. Chairman, you have been critical of the CFO for not being more strict. What is the power of the CFO to tell an agency you cannot spend the money? Because they seem to spend it before he even knows they've spent it.
Well, there's several. One is that the CFO writes the checks. So the CFO can say, agency, I'm not writing the checks. Now you might say, well, that's too late, but the CFO also has the ability to say to the agency, because there's an AFO, agency fiscal officer, who works for the CFO. There's an AFO in every agency, and the AFO can say you can't spend this money. The CFO also, and these are laws that go back to when John Wilson was the chair of the council, that give the CFO the authority to require the agencies that are overspending to come up with spending plans and to adhere to those spending plans. You may know from the DC auditor, Kathy Patterson, that she's looked at some of the, I think they're called financial review reports, and that oftentimes they're severely lacking in terms of a spending plan to deal with the spending pressure. There's just no discipline around that.
So, Mr. Chairman, let me ask, what does the CFO, you obviously have had this conversation with his Chief Financial Officer, Glenn Lee. What does Mr. Lee say in response when you essentially say to him, you are not doing your job as the CFO?
Well, my last conversation, which was just a week ago, actually, he had to leave that meeting, and the other person who was there said, well, what do you want us to do about it?
The CFO asked, what do you want us to do about it?
The person from the CFO said, what do you want us to do about it?
But what do you want them to do about it?
To control spending, to limit spending, just say you can't do this overspending. I'm sorry, you can't issue that contract. I'm sorry, you can't hire those people. You're overspending. You can't hire.
And the council could stop approving the reprogrammings also,
well,
right?
what they do is they do at the end of the fiscal year, these reprogrammings that come down in October, they come down in October, and they move money from the agency that's underspending to the agency that's overspending. And then guess what? The Board of Anti-Deficiency Act, it's BRADV is the acronym. BRADV then doesn't even meet, but if they were to meet, they would say, well, the agency got fixed. They didn't overspend. I don't know the last time that Brad V sanctioned anybody. I know that I asked him to look at the, do you remember the 36 contracts from DCPS that were expended without the council having approved the contracts? Do you remember that? That went to Brad V, and Brad V said not our jurisdiction.
It sounds like bottom line is that you're not an equal branch of government.
It sounds like the executive and the CFO have got to step up on controlling spending. That they ask for permission to spend, that's the budget, and then they disregard it in certain agencies.
This is part of your campaign for re-election?
Stop it. Sam.
What circumstance, under what circumstance would you support any kind of tax increase on wealth, you know, as proposed by Councilmember Zachary Parker?
Well, my understanding is that the proposal he has, as I understand it, which concerns capital gains, would net very little income to the city. I think it's great spin to characterize it as tax on the wealth. I think that we could do more to make our tax system more progressive. Progressive in tax terms means that wealthy people pay a higher percentage of their income than lower income people. That's progressive in tax terms. The fact is that this District of Columbia has the most or second most progressive tax burden in the country compared to all of the states. That's a fact. It's analyzed by an institute in California, I think. So we're already the best. Could we be better? Yes. But in my view, if we want to make the tax burden more progressive, let's look at where it is too high. That means for middle or lower income folks, and reduce those taxes instead of the answer being, oh, we'll just increase taxes. Now, if we're going to increase taxes, I think we should increase it when we absolutely need it. So every year I hear the same refrain: we need more money for this program, more money for that program, more money for another program. Let's raise taxes. We actually raised taxes 4 years ago on the wealthiest people, and it's not enough. Well, at some point, government just can't keep raising taxes. So I'm not against raising taxes, but I don't think that a piecemeal approach, such as what you're asking about, is the correct way to go about it.
No problem. I have an RFK related question, just circling back. Actually, just some clarity. So this 500 million, I remember earlier we said 500, you said 500 million plus 2 parking garages. So what's the total amount that's being allocated?
Well, it's technically speaking not being allocated. It's being the cost of that is being set aside in the budget. And if that sounds weird, it's just the accurate way to characterize it. And the total amount is about, for that, about, I'm going to say $876 million. You could get the correct number from our budget office.
Say that one more time, please. You said 176 billion.
I said 800, I think it's 876 billion, 876 million.
876 million, sorry.
But then there's debt service on top of that.
All right,
and we're not touching that.
When you say debt service, what do you know in layman's terms for our readers? Like I'm just.
Debt service is the interest the city pays. Okay. So what we're saying is that I'm going to give you $500 million, but to do that, I'm going to borrow, and the cost for me to borrow it is going to cost more. Over 30 years, I don't know, maybe double. And so actually the cost to me is $1 billion if I look at the full 30 years. It's actually more than that because we're talking about, as I said, 2 garages and the 500 million. That's what we're leaving in the budget. Okay. And then, as I've said before, we're talking with the commanders about making the deal better for district residents.
Got you. Last question for the time being, at least. Schools first and budgeting. So What I read, of course, said that the mayor's office did not follow schools first in budgeting. So I guess as a follow-up, sort of as a follow-up to questions that were asked before, what accountability measures are there for you to use in the future when the executive doesn't follow through on?
Well, I very much disagree with what the executive did with regard to school funding. The executive really ought to fund schools adequately, and I think it's inexcusable. However, what they did there is different than this overspending. Overspending is just flat out against the law. What the mayor's done with schools is to propose a budget that shorts a number of schools, but we have the budget. We are the ones who adopt the budget. We're the appropriators. And so it's not a violation of the law, what she did, in the sense that it could be prosecuted. We see this in a number of areas where she, for instance, the charter school facilities. The law requires that charter school facility allowance increase by 3% a year. She sent down a budget that doesn't do that, but then also sent down in the Budget Support Act language that amends the law so that she's not violating the law. I don't like it, but that's not the same as overspending. You can't pass a law that says it's okay to overspend. Well, maybe you could, but that's not what the law is.
What did she change? What did she propose to change?
I don't understand the question.
You said she proposed to change the law such that she doesn't overspend.
No, I thought she,
I'm sorry.
don't confuse things.
I'm trying not to.
No, the law is very clear. You can't overspend. And the law is very clear that you spend according to what's appropriated. And I mean, that's just simply the law. But for instance, with schools first, the argument would be, well, the council can fix it. We can't fix the overspending other than to give into it and not object to it. Megan.
How much revenue did you guys forgo by reversing the mayor's hotel taxes?
I think it was 7
Tourism
million.
Recovery District.
I think it's 7 million a year on the hotel.
On both both of those items, including the Tourism Recovery District sunset.
On the hotel, if I remember correctly, it's about $7 million. If you want a more precise number. About 7 million, just under 7 million on the hotel.
Okay.
On the Tourism Recovery District, the issue there is repurposing it. So what the mayor proposed was that none of it would go to promotion of tourism, even though it's called the Tourism Recovery District. And but we sunset it, and the sunset would be after 27. So the money foregone would be in the out years.
Like the mayor had used some of these increases to balance the budget. And in reversing them,
There's a cost.
right. So what I think going back to what has been a theme of some of our questions today is trying to better understand, like we hear a lot about enhancements that were made. I think one example of a cut is the MPD horse patrol, but to account for, and I don't know if, I haven't quite heard a figure on the Tourism Recovery District reversal, but how did you rebalance by taking away revenue, especially for a lot of these enhancements? Like if there's a big picture approach that includes some major buckets, I think that would really help to understand how it was rebalanced.
Well, what we did with the Tourism Recovery District in terms of major impact was to eliminate those revenues in FY28 and FY29. Those are the out years of the financial plan. And so there's a lot of flexibility for adjustment in those outer years of the financial plan. So for example, this is what the mayor did, was the UPSFF, the funding formula for schools. She increased it for FY26. I think we all know that. That's a good thing. But then she actually reduces it in the subsequent years, and that enables her to balance the financial plan. So I can't tell you specifically, but out of a 10 or $11 billion local funds budget, to eliminate roughly $26 million a year in FY28, FY29 probably means some programs were made one time.
Just another question on vouchers.
Which means then that all that has to get addressed in those years when we get to them.
Just a question on vouchers as well. Looks like the council added significant resources for new TAH vouchers and some permanent supportive housing vouchers. I wanted to get a sense as well if there's any intent behind how the council is either directing or intending for those to be used, whether it's for families that are going to be exiting rapid rehousing, for families who are in the shelter system, given we now expect that there's going to be many more families in shelter. And then also I'm wondering about if there was any consideration about vouchers for individuals, which the administration did not propose funding for.
I looked to the Human Services Committee with regard to how to spread the dollars in families or individuals. So you really have to ask that question of them. The money, I think most of the money is supposed to go to those who are exiting rapid rehousing. It's not enough, but that's the intent. I think that's going to depend upon either good faith on the part of the executive or oversight from the Human Services Committee.
So the 160 is on top of the 156
160
vouchers that the mayor had proposed in the budget.
I think that would be correct. You know, so I'd look at staff, but they're nodding yes. Yeah.
You mentioned many things that you were not able to change, like the change with the money where the bag tax doesn't go to the Anacostia anymore. Of the things that you were not able to change from the mayor's budget, was there one that was more concerning to you than any other?
There were a lot, but I would say one is the child tax credit. But I think the child tax credit has to be more robust than even what we adopted last year. And I think that's where we have to go. So that comes to mind. Oh, I'm probably going to get in trouble because I left something else out. I would like us to see us to be able to do more in the area of affordable housing.
And you mentioned the environment, a lot of environmental issues.
Yeah. The environment, the environmental programs is very troubling because what the mayor has done is to a complicated set of maneuvers, basically taken money that's collected for the Sustainable Energy Trust Fund. It's a fee on utility bills, and she's sort of moved it through different agencies so that it ends up paying the city's utility bills. And to unwind that is not only expensive, but very complicated.
Thank you.
Bill, you may be the last question. Oh, Alex.
And it just occurred to me, because you're a member of the National Capital Planning Commission, are you not? Have you seen the story in Politico where the new Bush appointees have accused the chairman of the Federal Reserve of lying on his proposal to revamp and enhance the building that he's in that goes through the National Capital Planning Commission? And this is in the story as a pretext to remove him for cause. I'm just repeating the story.
Yes, I've not seen the story. I am aware of some controversy around that. I think we have better things to do for the government to function. Alex has got the last question. Only if I like it.
I wanted to ask about the Rock Creek Tennis Center land deal that's included in here. It doesn't seem like the city is buying this. It's just getting it from the federal government and then improving is that money just for improvements at the stadium itself?
Correct.
So the plan that Mark Ein has been showing people for a larger expansion into a sportsplex and blah, 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 he's going to be taking this on privately somehow. Is the city involved at all?
I can't speak for him. The tennis center desperately needs modernization. And the annual tournament that's about to happen is in jeopardy if that stadium is not improved. So there's money in the capital budget for that. And I have been informed that there is discussion about a transfer of jurisdiction of the land, which the subtitle pre-authorizes. But it would be, the pre-authorization is for, I'm going to say a more limited area than what some of the rumors have been.
So the deal itself hasn't been consummated with the federal government yet. It's just, this is in case.
Correct. And I would say the council has not been involved. So I have talked to Mr. Ein. So I have information from him. The executive has not reached out to the council at all with regard to it. So to be clear, where we are is that with the budget, we would be saying that there's money available for modernizing that stadium, keeping the tournament, that's the big tournament that comes up in August, and that if there's a transfer of jurisdiction, that the land under the stadium we're accepting it.
Is there any thought or conversation in that to include Carter Barron, the amphitheater?
There's been thought and conversation, but Carter Barron is a much more expensive proposition. My own view is that I would very much like for the city to have and improve the Carter Barron amphitheater, but that's a cost that we cannot afford right now. No, I don't. A lot, yes. That's a technical budget term, a lot.
And have you been approached?
No, you already been recognized. Yes, what's your question?
Have you been approached about including Carter Barron?
There's been talk about Carter Barron for years. So there's nothing new there other than the fact that nothing has been done to improve it. But it's expensive and it belongs to the Park Service, and the Park Service ought to fix it up. We can't be acquiring all the parks, federal parks, and doing all the upkeep for them, particularly when we're struggling with the child tax credit and affordable housing and public safety and public education and public health. Thank you all very much.
One quick question, Mr. Chairman. You said you've been meeting with the
It was
command.
the last word.
Well, it's just like the budget. We're overspending the questions. You've said you've been meeting with the commanders, trying to reach some kind of agreement and deal so you can support the stadium, or the council can support the stadium.
Correct.
Are you meeting with the mayor's people, the deputy mayor, Nina Albert, or any other officials of the mayor's office trying to come to an agreement on where you guys are? Or are you just talking with the team?
Well, the mayor has made it quite clear that she thinks the deal that she submitted was perfect. I think those are her words, perfect, and that we should just approve it, and we should actually approve it on Tuesday. That's her view. Have I talked with Nina Albert about it? Yes.
And are those ongoing like the commanders, or are they just one and done?
Nothing's one and done.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.